Hey guys, so my name's Ryan, and what I did for my GIS project was I compared the shore and boat diving, scuba diving sites in the Coromandel Peninsula. So across the Coromandel Peninsula we find some of New Zealand's best scuba diving sites, which are located both on and offshore. And so it's kind of surprising to think that there's no real map showing where these sites are and what conditions that you can find in them. So personally, as a dive instructor, I like to remind people that the underwater environment is essentially trying to kill you in any way that it can, because you need all this specialized gear and high amounts of training just to survive in it. Anyone who's been diving or spend any time out in the ocean really will quickly realize that the environment varies greatly between sites, sometimes just within a few hundred meters. So it's important to have some sort of indication of what you're going to find out there for obvious health and safety reasons. In New Zealand we rely heavily on the outdoors with our tourism sector. That includes diving, so creating a feature map also has economic benefits for tourism as well. Diving takes up a lot of time and money. Like I said, you need all the specialized gear and quite a lot of training, so it's important to create a map that helps us divers assess which sites are worth the effort, because overall shore diving is usually organised by the divers and carried out themselves, whereas boat diving is typically done through another organisation like a dive centre, but costs a lot more money because you do have to hire things like boats and all the specialised gear. In this study I used Dive Zone for the Yanga as a central starting point, because both shore divers and boat divers hired their gear and services and then went to the sites from here. Okay, so past work, what's been done? So like I said, essentially there hasn't really been anything done like this in New Zealand before in any kind of great detail, so we don't really get these maps. If you look at figure 1, you can see on the left there, quite small, sorry, this here is a dive site of Cape Town in South Africa. If you zoom in quite closely you can see all these different dots and different sites. Now the different sites show the exact location and attributes of each site. When you compare that to the map of New Zealand on the right, this is actually the most detailed dive map I could find of the Coromandel area. You just get a few names of some islands and then a big label telling you where the Pacific Ocean is, so not incredibly detailed as to where these sites are on each island, and trust me, there are at least a dozen sites on each of these islands. It doesn't really show you where they are. Okay. So I actually did a little bit of data gathering myself for this, just a wee bit, because I did want to use data that had already been conducted. But to get a little bit more detail, I constructed a basic survey that I don't really have time to show you guys here. However, I managed to ask about 60 local divers and dive site operators a series of questions on local conditions, abiotic and biotic, and used weather data that was recorded over the last year to compile a rating system for all of the dive sites, which I gave them an overall score out of 10. The data I managed to grab from the geography database, I used shapefiles for road networks and address points, as well as a satellite image as a base map, and from there I created a locator file from the address points shapefile for the 5 shore diving sites, because I got the exact address of where each site was on the shore. I used the road network to conduct an optimal travel route between Dive Zone for the Yanga and these sites after I digitized the location of Dive Zone for the Yanga using network analysis tools. And because the boat diving sites were located offshore, so obviously didn't have any points on the address points, I digitized them myself onto the map. From there I used proximity analysis tools to create buffer zones of 20 kilometers and 50 kilometers from Dive Zone for the Yanga to illustrate the distance from there by boat. So you can see that there, figure 2. Figure 2A showing the shore diving sites, the numbers indicating their score out of 10, as well as the black lines there indicating the optimal travel route to each site. Figure 2B, you can see all the different boat diving sites there, and the buffer zone, the inner circle there, showing within 20 kilometers of Dive Zone for the Yanga, and the outer zone there within 50 kilometers of Dive Zone for the Yanga. And obviously the big red and black bullseye is Dive Zone for the Yanga. So just a quick analysis of that figure 2, we can see that the overall quality of boat diving sites is higher than those found on the shore. The lowest boat diving site, which was Slipper and Mercury Islands, respectively, scoring an 8 out of 10 overall, which is much higher than the highest scoring shore diving site, which only scored 7.5 out of 10. So even though all of the boat diving sites, apart from Cathedral Cove, which is in there quite closely, are located further away on the map than the shore diving sites, they all score quite highly. Distance from the dive zone was actually one of the criteria I included in my survey, so it affected their ranking as well. Overall, the highest ranking site was a boat diving site, Cathedral Cove. You can see there, nice and tightly within that 20-kilometre zone, which scored a 9.5 out of 10. So yeah, and might have done a little bit, not scored as well if it was outside that 20-kilometre buffer zone, but it's in there quite nicely and it fit all the other criteria quite well, which ranked it quite high. So in terms of limitations, so out of the study, you do get this comparison of different sites on and offshore. However, all the criteria were devised by myself, even though I did use input from other divers and dive site operators. I kind of relied on my own experience, and doesn't really lead to anything that's quite quantifiable, so you can't run any statistics on it or anything like that. It does come down to personal opinion. So also we are using this optimal routes system to each dive site. It didn't really factor in anything like slope or road quality, or for example with these boat diving sites I didn't take into account weather and boat traffic, which also affect travel time, and so distance as impedance could be measured a little bit better in both these methods, and should really be kind of noted down or incorporated as a more accurate depiction of the accessibility to each of these sites. And finally, anyone who's ever done any kind of diving, or just through common sense, you kind of realize that depth is obviously quite important for each site, how deep these sites are. However, there obviously wasn't too much data out there on depth that you can get from remote sensing or anything. I don't know if you could get such a thing through NIWA or local fishermen with their sonar, or just by mapping it out yourself. Probably the best way to go, but again, all the data on the geography database kind of limiting in terms of ocean depth. So if we measure that, we can create more detailed maps. In conclusion, from the results, we can see overall that all these boat diving sites do rank higher, with lowest scoring boat sites coming in a lot higher than the highest scoring shore diving sites. So we conclude overall that boat dives offer access to higher quality scuba diving sites. And the end result is that map that can be used by professional and recreational divers, which has potential benefits for advertisement, business planning and the tourism sector, and health and safety. With the addition of data on the depths of these sites and perhaps a more extensive and professional survey method, greater detailed maps may one day be produced. Thank you very much. Any questions?